Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I'm here today at the VHU, the Military History Institute in Prague in the Czech Republic, taking a look at some particularly rare guns from their reference collection, like this, one of only two examples known to exist of the Erma EMP36 submachine gun. Now, what makes this cool and special is that this is the primary gun that led to the MP38 and in turn the MP40, one of the most common or most well-recognized submachine guns of the Second World War, and a gun that would continue to see use around the world for decades after the Second World War. So honestly, we don't know very much about the very early origins of the MP38 submachine guns, but what we do have are a couple surviving examples like this one. And there is this gun, and then there is a submachine gun manufactured by Schmeisser, designated the MK, machine and carabiner, 36,2. And these two appear to be the two guns that donated all of the features between the two of them that led to the MP38. So the MP38 development program probably began between 33 and 35. A lot of this documentation was kind of hidden in the first place because Germany wasn't really supposed to be doing new weapons development. And then what wasn't hidden was often, in many cases, destroyed during or in the late stages of World War II. So this is all a bit fuzzy and speculative. But what we see is the MP38 has features from both the Schmeisser and the Erma guns that probably competed for military adoption. Now, the Erma here contributed basically the overall design structure of the gun. So what we see is a pistol grip, an underfolding stock. This is the first underfolding stock of this style. The almost vertical magazine well. We have the muzzle hook out here that you would see on the MP38s. Like, from the outside, you have the structure that becomes the MP38. The Schmeisser gun contributed a lot of the features of the interior. So the trigger mechanism, some of the details of the bolt construction, and the magazine itself largely come from the Schmeisser. Now, I have a separate video on the Schmeisser MK36 too. They have two of them actually at the British Royal Armories. So if you want to see the other half of this story, definitely check out that video. I'll link to it in the description here. Now, this is a ridiculously complicated gun in its design and manufacture, like far more than you would ever expect from a submachine gun. And of course, a lot of that got fixed, which is to say simplified, when the MP38 was developed. But we're going to go ahead and dig into this, and I have the assistance of a couple of the folks here at the VHU. We're going to detail strip this, and we'll, in order to only strip it once, and then be able to just put it back together and film it complete, we're going to jump straight to it completely field stripped, and I'll show you the reverse process of putting it back together. All right, so we went and jumped all the way forward to having this completely, almost completely detail stripped. There are a couple little pieces that we didn't take apart because there is still some damage to this. We have a screw in here that's really tight that we don't want to break. So this is as far as we're taking it apart, but rather than put it together and then disassemble it again, figured I'd show it to you with some of the detail parts here being assembled in reverse order. So let's go ahead and start with the bolt assembly. Just in general, it's almost insane how complicated the EMP36 is for a submachine gun. Now, obviously, like, the real hero of the German military is whoever simplified this to the MP38 design. But we have an extractor here, which unfortunately this one is broken, but extractor and spring plunger that are not too unusual. But where this gets a little weird is we have a fixed firing pin, but it does have a spring. It sits right in there, and the whole bolt face is detachable. So the bolt face screws on. Put this all the way in. So the bolt face screws in like that, and then it's held in place by a screw in the bolt face right there. Now, you saw our firing pin, our front firing pin section go in. It's spring loaded, but it's a very heavy spring, and I suspect the intention was that if a cartridge manages to get into the breech face completely in a way that it would normally detonate out of battery, maybe there's supposed to be enough give in the firing pin that the firing pin will push backwards rather than detonate the primer of that cartridge, but I don't see that actually happening. I see it just detonating out of battery anyway. We'll get to this in a moment, but this is the front section of the telescoping mainspring, and it's got this piece that's going to go all the way down and contact the firing pin section that we just put in. But once again, you can see the firing pin protrudes even without this being in there. All right, there's that screw fully installed. By the way, note that typically, in a typically German manner, every one of these little tiny parts is serial numbered. Even the extractor plunger is serialized. So that spring is going to go in there, and then we're going to push it back, snap the extractor in. Like I said, unfortunately, the extractor on this example is broken. Next up is the mainspring assembly. So the mainspring is built into the bolt. So at the back of the bolt, we have this threading, and note that there's this little hole right there, or half circular hole. Well, the spring goes into this telescoping tube, which is going to protect it. That prevents dirt from getting into the spring, which is a good idea, but holy cow, did they come up with a complicated way to do this. So we've got these two components. Then this guy is going to go over the top here, and this is going to thread into the back of the bolt to tie the whole thing together. And then in that little tiny hole, we have a little tiny set screw. In case this is not immediately obvious, a set screw is not an ideal component to have in a military submachine gun. This would be vastly simplified on the MP38. But let's go ahead and assemble this here. So I want to compress this down. Go, and then screw this together. And I mean, look at that. When it's snug, it's exactly perfectly lined up right there, which tells me that hole is also exactly perfectly lined up. Let's put that screw in, and then take our tiniest little gunsmithing screwdriver. All right, and there we go, all the way in place, and we now have our captive recoil spring and bolt assembly. Now, I do want to show you some elements on the rear stock assembly, because this was not made in one piece. This is two pieces here, and you can see we've got a little bit of movement. We've taken the screws out here. There is one more screw deep down inside there. There it is, way down in the bottom, and it's stuck in place and doesn't want to come out. And so we're not going to force that one. But what you would normally do is take that one out, and then this assembly comes off. It's got the fire control parts in it, and it leaves you the grip frame here as a separate component. Again, this is nutty. Like, even by German standards, this is nutty. Now, while we've got it here, I can show you the trigger. So the trigger has a selector switch here. We're in semi-auto right now, so you can hear that click. That's the disconnector resetting the sear. If I switch this to full auto, it's now a progressive trigger. So this is similar, basically the same system that Erma had on their EMP submachine guns, where full auto gives you the option for full auto, but it's still a progressive trigger. So a short pull does semi, and a longer pull does full auto. Kind of interesting that they, like, semi-auto just prevents you from going full auto, where full auto gives you the progressive trigger mechanism. A little bit of a weird choice. Normally, having such very fancy wooden grip panels on a gun like this would be a point of, like, wow, why did you do that? On this gun, that's the least of our efficiency concerns. Panels, the grips are both serialized 1. So put that in there. Got our beautifully blued grip screw. There we go, grip panels back on. And now I can put these 2 screws back in. So there's the main screw. Again, both of these are serialized. That one's so tiny I don't think I can even zoom in close enough for you to see it. There we go, that's got those locked in place. And now we have the wooden forend. When the gun became the MP38, this of course became Bakelite. Very gently slide this back in place. There we are, and there are 2 screws that go through the side to keep it in. And now we have one more assembly, and that is the barrel assembly. And this is another truly bonkers, like someone deliberately chose to do this way. So when they're building the gun, they have the receiver tube, and they're going to slide, one of the first things they do is slide this nut into the receiver tube from the back, all the way up to the front here. The reason it doesn't come out now is because we have the ejector installed behind it, and I'm not going to take the ejector out. So this goes all the way up to the front. We then have a barrel with threading back here, and the barrel has these 2 little locking pins to put it in the correct orientation. And then this has to be threaded onto the barrel. Now you can see there are a couple of holes on this nut. There's the other one. In the factory, they would have had a very long tool that went in all the way from the back with 2 big prongs on it, and they could thread that in. So this isn't meant to be like quick detachable or really detachable at all, sort of, except at a very armor level sort of thing for replacing the barrel. What I need to do is actually use a pin punch to screw this around and thread the barrel on. So you can see I've got it started right there. Let's see, actually I can probably hold this, turn the barrel for a few turns. That's upside down. There we go, that's right side up. And now we're just going to, and I'm an idiot. All right, and I forgot to put the sling swivel on, which goes in between. So stand by, we'll be right back. All right, there we go. I took it off, put that cap back on. Come on. There we go, line up the barrel. And now we'll use this pin punch to sort of jerry-rig this back in place. There we go. Got a little bit of wobble, but I'm not going to tighten that down anymore here. So that is our barrel assembly. Now we can actually assemble the gun. So this is the field stripped configuration. This is as far as you would normally actually disassemble the gun, just for purposes of cleaning and such. So I can take barrel assembly. The bolt is going to go into it right there. That goes forward. I need to make sure that this is locked in the downward position, which drops that locking peg down. All I have to do to unlock it is rotate it 90 degrees and it snaps up. Let's open that again, like so. And then we're going to put this in, let's see, in this orientation. I have to pull the trigger to drop the sear while I'm doing this. There we go, in, rotate it around, the sear snaps into place, and there's the locking pin. There we are. There is our EMP36. Now I can show you a few of the features here. First off, The stock here, this is the original iteration of the stock that would become totally iconic on the MP40. It is held in place just by a friction spring. So on the MP38 and MP40, there is a locking button here. On the 36, they did not have a button, nor did they have one on the butt plate. You can fold that all together, and it folds up like so. We have a really nice EMP 1936 or a 36 date there, stamping in the wood. This shouldn't surprise you at all, having seen the inside of the gun now, that they actually went ahead and not checkered, but serrated the folding metal butt plate. Needless to say, this goes away on the MP38. The manual safety here is a locked open notch, like so. This does not have a safety to prevent the bolt from bouncing open, catching a cartridge, and then slamming forward and firing it. And the early MP38s didn't either. That's something that they would add shortly after the MP38 went into production. So the MP40 has a safety mechanism to prevent that, but the original gun here does not. This marking in the wood, by the way, is the only place where the date or the company are marked. Every other component is serialized with a 1 or a 01, but there's no marking on the receiver or the barrel, nothing else that says Erma. Worth pointing out here also, the magazine well is a separate component that slides onto the receiver tube and is screwed in place. Again, not surprising if you've seen the inside. The front sight ramp is checkered to make sure that it doesn't give you undue glare. This is a really interesting feature here because it presages the hook, the muzzle hook on the MP38 and MP40. I don't have any details on exactly the device that this was intended to interact with, but the idea is that this was set up probably for some sort of firing port in a vehicle. The idea was you could snap the gun through, push the muzzle through, this would then release, snap in place, and it would prevent the gun from sliding backward into the vehicle. Now, how exactly you are supposed to release this to take the gun out, I'm not sure. Judging by the complexity of the gun itself, if the same person designed the firing port, it would have some sort of huge number of springs and levers and switches to allow it to unhook, but I don't know what the details of that would have been. One of the other really interesting features of the MP36 is that the magazine well is not actually vertical. It's not horizontal, it's just canted a little bit off to the side. So this is looking straight down at the gun, and you can see the mag well. There's the mag well, there's vertical on the gun. So just slightly offset to the right. Unfortunately, the magazine is missing from this gun. The provenance on this is that the VHU, the Czech Military History Institute, got this gun from a collection of captured weapons that were basically scrounged up in Czechoslovakia at the end of World War II. In the late 1940s, the Czech military sorted out basically all the guns that weren't standard issue, that were oddballs, and they stuck them into a separate specific depot for sort of the excess overrun oddball stuff. And the museum system had access to that depot, and that's where this gun was found, but it was found without a magazine. It will not fit an MP38 or MP40 mag. It won't fit any other 1930s period German submachine gun magazine. It would have been a double stack, double feed magazine, almost certainly, like the other Erma submachine guns, but alas, there doesn't appear to be a surviving magazine for it. There is one other of these guns in the United States. It has a magazine that was fabricated from an MP40 mag. Similarly, when the gun was found, the rear sight was also missing. So it looks like it would have had a flip sight, probably 100 and 200 meters, but we don't have the original sight to actually show you there. Total production of the Erma 36 isn't known. This is serial number 1, which obviously doesn't tell you much about the production numbers. The other one is in a private collection in the United States. It is serial number 14. So we have 2 data points, but for a prototype gun like this, total production somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 guns is probably reasonable. That's enough to do basic field testing, basic endurance testing, for an organization like the Wehrmacht. Production numbers for the Erma or for the Schmeisser counterpart are probably pretty similar. So it's very cool to be able to get a chance to take a look at this. I was hoping to be able to show you guys both the Erma 36 and the Schmeisser 36, and now I have. So a big thanks to the VHU for giving me access to this one. Really awesome of them. If you happen to find yourself in Prague, definitely set aside a good half day or more to check out the Czech Army Museum. That is part of the VHU, the Military History Institute. It's a particularly well put together museum with especially a huge wall of Czech prototype guns up on display that are definitely worth some time looking at, because the Czechs designed some interesting and some really weird stuff both. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.